Hi guys. So today we are going to talk about chapter 18, which is the blood. I've divided it into two parts. So first we're going to cover the basics and talk about red blood cells, and then we're going to switch gears and talk about white blood cells in the second portion. So the cardiovascular system as a whole is made up of the blood, the heart, and the blood vessels. So the heart is the pump, the blood is the liquid medium that transports everything, and then the blood vessels are like the highways. Hematology is the study of blood and the blood-forming tissues and any disorders that occur. So blood is actually a connective tissue, but it's one of those specialized connective tissue, and it's composed of plasma and formed elements. So first off, the functions of blood, the most important probably, is that it transports things. So it's going to transport oxygen from the lungs to the cells in the body, and then in return, transport carbon dioxide from the cells of the body to the lungs so that we can get rid of it. It's also going to transport nutrients from the GI tract to the body cells, hormones, very importantly, from the endocrine system that we just talked about, and tissues to the body cells, and then waste products so that we can get rid of them from the body cells to both the lungs and the kidneys so that the kidneys can audit and monitor our urine production and get rid of what we don't need, and then also to the sweat glands, the liver, and other areas that we can get rid of these waste products. Also heat from the body cells to the surface of the body to help monitor our temperature. Blood also regulates our pH. The pH of blood is about 7.35 to 7.45, and the blood contains buffers so that if our pH gets a little high and we're going into alkalosis, we can help regulate that. Or on the other hand, if it gets a little low and we're going into acidosis, we can also regulate that. We're going to talk more about acidosis and alkalosis later on. Body temperature, vasoconstriction, and vasodilation. Blood temperature is about 38 degrees Celsius, which is about 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's also going to help regulate the water content of the cells. Blood also has a protective feature. It coagulates to protect against blood loss. So when you get a cut, you're not just going to bleed incessantly for days on end. Your blood will coagulate to stop the bleeding. Also has white blood cells to protect against foreign invaders. So the total blood volume is about 4 to 6 liters, or about 8% of our body weight. Males have slightly more than females, and this is regulated by antidiuretic hormone, aldosterone, and atrial natriuretic peptide, which we talked about in the endocrine system. So blood is made up of plasma and formed elements. Plasma is about 55% of it, and the formed elements are about 45% of it. Breaking down the plasma, you have about 91% water, so most of it is water, but then you have some proteins and other solids in there as well. Among the proteins, we have things like albumin and globulin and fibrinogen, and then the other solids, we have electrolytes, nutrients, gases, of course, waste products, and other regulatory substances. The formed elements are the platelets, the white blood cells, and the red blood cells. Red blood cells we have the most of, ranging anywhere from 4.8 to 5.4 million. White blood cells about 5 to 10,000. And then platelets, which act in coagulation, we have about 150,000 to 400,000, somewhere in those areas. In the white blood cells, we have 5 different types, and we're going to talk about those in part 2 of this lecture. But we have neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, and eosinophils. They say never let monkeys eat bananas, and that will help you remember the order from the most numerous to the least numerous. So plasma is the liquid portion of the blood, as I said, about 55%. Most of it is water, the rest is solids. So in the solids, we have mostly the plasma proteins that we talked about already. We also have antibodies that are synthesized by B lymphocytes. All plasma proteins are important to maintain our blood osmotic pressure. And then we also have electrolytes like sodium, potassium, chlorine, bicarbonate, phosphate, things like that. We have nutrients like glucose. Some hormones are actually proteins. We have gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. and then waste products like uric acid and creatinine. And we'll talk more about those kind of things when we get to the urinary system. So the formed elements, about the other 45% of the blood, are erythrocytes, which are red blood cells, thrombocytes, which are platelets, and leukocytes, which are white blood cells. Red blood cells outnumber white blood cells by about 700 to 1. And you can see on that picture there, the little red biconcave discs are the red blood cells. The purple things are the white blood cells. And then those tiny little fragments that you can see are the platelets. So normal blood levels, red blood cell count 4.2 to 5.4 in men, 3.6 to 5.0 in women. Hemoglobin 14 to 18 in men, 12 to 16 in women. Hematocrit 40 to 54 in men, 38 to 46 in women. White blood cell count 3.5 to 10.5, and platelets again 150 to 400. So this is just showing you after putting it through a centrifuge, normal blood, you're going to have about 37 to 47% hematocrit for females, 42 to 52% hematocrit for males. So you're going to have that plasma, and then there's going to be a buffy coat in the middle, which are white blood cells and platelets, and then the hematocrit is red blood cells. In an anemic, you're going to have a lower red blood cell count. And polycythemia, you have an elevated red blood cell count. So hematopoiesis is the formation of blood cells. Pluripotent hematopoietic stem cells are found in the red bone marrow, which is myeloid tissue. Before birth, we have the yolk sac, the liver, the spleen, the thymus, and the lymph nodes that help with blood cell production. After birth, it's only the red marrow, though. The epiphyses of the long bones, so the humerus and the femur, those kind of bones. Flat bones like the sternum, the ribs, and the cranium. The vertebrae, the pelvis, and lymphoid tissue is also actually involved in the production of lymphocytes, which we will talk about in the next chapter. So there's a multipotent hematopoietic stem cell up top. It will divide. The remaining cells are going to go down one of two paths. They're either going to go down the myeloid stem cell path or the lymphoid stem cell path. If they go down the myeloid stem cell path, they could turn into a megakaryoblast, which will turn into a megakaryocyte, which will actually start to fragment off and form platelets. Or it could turn into a proerythroblast, which will turn into a reticulocyte and then a red blood cell. It could turn into a myeloblast, which will differentiate into either a basophil, neutrophil, or eosinophil. Or it can differentiate into a monoblast, which will differentiate into a monocyte. If it takes the lymphoid stem cell path, it will differentiate into a lymphoblast, which will then either differentiate into a smaller lymphocyte or a natural killer cell. The small lymphocytes will then either become T or B cells. And we'll talk a lot about that when we get to the immunity chapter. So myeloid stem cells gives rise to those red blood cells, platelets, and all of the white blood cells except for lymphocytes. They differentiate into blast cells, which will basically develop into the actual formed elements. Lymphoid stem cells give rise to the lymphocytes. They will develop into either B cells or T cells, and like I said, we'll talk about those in the chapter on immunity. Stem cells are able to differentiate into all different types of blood cells. So when they are young at the early stage where they're ready to differentiate, they're referred to as a blast. When they become a more mature stem cell and they're not going to differentiate anymore, they become a cyte. So a monoblast is going to differentiate into a monocyte, for example. Stem cells are mitotic, so they can replicate themselves. And when each cell becomes almost mature, so they're at the cyte stage, pretty close, it's going to leave the bone marrow. Mature cells lose their mitotic ability, so they cannot divide. The lifespan of most blood cells is actually only hours to days. So our blood cells have to keep dividing to replace the ones that are dying. The exception, there are some lymphocytes that remain mitotic and live for years, and we'll actually talk about that in immunity. Erythropoietin is the hormone produced by the kidneys. It speeds up red blood cell production. Thrombopoietin stimulates platelet production. And then we have cytokines, We have colony-stimulating factors, which stimulate white blood cell production, and interleukins, which stimulate white blood cell production and activate the white blood cells so they can actually perform their functions. And we'll talk about interleukins and colony-stimulating factors in immunity. Erythrocytes are biconcave discs. The biconcave shape increases the surface area for better gas exchange. So the red blood cells carry hemoglobin. And because they are the biconcave discs, they have more surface area to carry more hemoglobin. If they can carry more hemoglobin, they can carry more oxygen and exchange it for more carbon dioxide to get rid of it. So they have to be very flexible because they're passing through these really tiny capillaries. And they actually have a protein called spectrin that gives them their flexibility. They don't have a nucleus or organelles, and they cannot divide. So they only live about 120 days. The red blood cells contain hemoglobin, as I said, which is actually produced earlier before the nucleus was expelled. So when the red blood cells are ready to become fully mature, they basically spit out the nucleus and organelles to make more room for hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein molecule that's adapted to carry oxygen. Each red blood cell contains about 280 million molecules of hemoglobin. It is made up of 4 large globin proteins, so it is the quaternary structure of a protein. You have 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, and each one embeds an iron-containing heme center. So each of these chains can carry oxygen, and it'll carry the oxygen to the cells and then pick up the carbon dioxide to take it to the lungs for expulsion. Normal hemoglobin in an adult male is 14 to 18, female is 12 to 16. The hemoglobin inside the red blood cells picks up the oxygen in the lungs. It's then referred to as oxyhemoglobin. It releases the oxygen to the tissues, so the oxygen is going to diffuse out of the red blood cell into the plasma. Then it's going to diffuse out of the plasma into the interstitial fluid, and then it's going to diffuse out of the interstitial fluid into the cells finally. So it doesn't just go from the blood to these cells. It has to go from the red blood cells to the plasma, to the interstitial fluid, into the cells. Then hemoglobin is going to pick up and bind to carbon dioxide that the tissues produced from metabolism. And it's going to take the carbon dioxide to the lungs where it's going to get exhaled. Hemoglobin also functions in blood pressure regulation. The gaseous hormone nitric oxide binds to hemoglobin. So hemoglobin can actually release nitric oxide, which causes vasodilation, which improves blood flow and is also going to enhance oxygen delivery to the area. So as I said, red blood cells live about 120 days. Production of red blood cells is called erythropoiesis. Erythropoietin is the hormone that's produced by the kidney receptors, and they will detect hypoxia. So if we don't have enough red blood cells in our blood, the receptors in the kidney pick it up. They release erythropoietin, and erythrocytes will start development. Once it becomes a reticulocyte, that's an erythroblast that has finally expelled its nucleus, and now it's biconcave. Reticulocytes leave the bone marrow and finish maturing in the blood. It takes about 1 to 2 days. So the reticulocyte count is going to be about 0.5 to 1.5% of red blood cells. The hematocrit is just the percentage of red blood cells in whole blood. Anemia is less than a normal amount of hemoglobin or red blood cells. Polycythemia is greater than a normal amount of hemoglobin or red blood cells. When each red blood cell gets worn out, it gets phagocytized by macrophages, usually in the spleen. The spleen is something that we can live without, but we have to be really careful if we do, because if the spleen gets damaged or something, it's going to bleed profusely because of the fact that it's getting rid of these old, worn-out red blood cells. So we can live without it, they can take it out, but we have to be careful about getting sick and things like that. Hemoglobin inside the red blood cells gets recycled. It basically gets split into 3 parts. The globin, which is the protein portion. Amino acids make up the protein, and those will get reused for new proteins. The iron is carried by transfer into the liver, the muscles, the bone marrow, and it's going to be stored as either ferritin or hemosiderin. And then it'll be used again later. The heme is converted to bilirubin, which is a yellow pigment, and then carried to the liver and excreted with the bile through the intestines. So here is the life of a red blood cell. Hematopoiesis of erythrocytes begins in the hemopoietic bone marrow. Comes a stem cell to an erythroblast to a reticulocyte, which has ejected its nucleus. Now it is biconcave. It's released into the bloodstream. Takes about 1 to 2 days to mature, and then it's going to circulate for about 120 days. Once it is old and worn out, it's going to be phagocytized by a macrophage in the bone marrow, liver, and spleen. Going to be recycled, so the protein's going to go one place, the iron's going to go another place, and the heme is going to go still another place. So we're going to reuse the amino acids, we're going to recycle that iron, and we're going to get rid of that heme so that we can recycle it and use it for other things. So that is red blood cells. I will talk to you when we talk about white blood cells. Bye.